get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Chris Vendilli of Vendilli.com. Chris, before I formally introduce you, I will always like to point out other episodes people should check out. A couple other good ones. Jason Swank, I actually had him on twice. Chris and I both know Jason. He talked about how he built up his agency to 8 figures, sold it. And then the second episode, how he's been buying up agencies and just different things in the business space, the valuation space. And he also has a group where he helps agency owners. That was both those are good episodes. I had Ian Garlick on the show, who runs videocasestory.com. And he talked about the importance of customer success stories. We'll talk about some today with Chris. And Chris, he talked about how it's just some innovative, interesting marketing ideas. His dad owned a restaurant and they had live dolphins in the restaurant. Now, that's kind of weird and interesting, but what was even stranger, the restaurant was in Wisconsin. Okay, so live dolphins in Wisconsin in a restaurant. But we talked about standing out from the crowd. So that was a really good one too. That and many more you can check out on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. Chris, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run around in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can develop amazing relationships, create great content, and most importantly, run their business. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, and I've found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you definitely should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. That's all we do. I am excited to introduce Chris Vendilli. He went from the Air Force to the Pittsburgh Police to owning an agency. The agency does web design, development, online marketing, advertising, and a lot of HubSpot training and consulting. And Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I know we talked about doing an interview for a while now, and appreciate the invitation.
Well, you were busy actually buying a building and moving in, which we will talk about, but just start off with Vendilli Digital Group and what you do. Sure.
We're a digital marketing agency. We do, I know some of your listeners or a lot of your listeners are savvy. So we do some design development. We're a HubSpot Platinum Partner, branding, positioning, inbound marketing, digital advertising. So you got our site up there. Another cool thing that we do is a little more off the beaten path. We're certified to bring Google Street View inside of a business. It's somewhat unique. But most of our clients are a little more B2B focused, either professional services, manufacturers, with several SaaS clients. Or they have kind of a higher transaction value or lifetime value customer. So in those scenarios, we might have like a wealth management firm or trying to think, like basically we're looking for customers with like a high lifetime value customer, because just in that case, the way we're built to run and what we do, the math just makes more sense. The economics work out a little bit better for sort of full service agency retainer with PPC and SEO experts and designers and developers all at your disposal.
How did you stumble? We'll go back. I want to hear if you're allowed to share any crazy detective police stories at some point, but how'd you stumble into the agency world?
So like when I bridge that gap, I've always been kind of a technophile, sort of a gadget freak, computer guy. And I went to college right out of high school at Pitt, and I played hockey there. Suffered a little shoulder injury in a practice, and my grades quickly went down the tubes when I wasn't practicing 3 or 4 nights a week, practices and games 3-4 times a week on the ice hockey team. So I joined a fraternity. Grades kind of went to the gutter. Is it no profanity on this podcast?
You could swear.
Oh yeah, my
Yeah.
grades went to shit, and I found myself on double secret probation. I realized, I'm just not really ready for college. And once I rehabbed the shoulder, I joined the Air Force. But the consistent theme throughout was I was always like a little bit of a nerd. I came home from the Air Force 4 years later. I was active duty, stationed overseas the entire time, and I went back to Pitt, and while I was there, I started doing eBay trading assistant as like a way to make some extra dough on top of my GI Bill. And I realized pretty quickly I enjoy building the auction listings and teaching myself like HTML more than I enjoy like dealing with other people's junk. And then I started building websites for people. I had a couple sites while I was still going to Pitt full time. There were membership sites. I was selling information products. This is taking me down memory lane, but I wrote the same paper and submitted to two different classes. One was my English class. One was a intro to programming class about how to use MySpace to market your business. And around that time, I had bought an ebook on eBay for 99 cents. And I'm very meta, but I paid the 99 cents and the ebook came to my email like minutes later. And I was like, I just paid this guy at like midnight. And I got the ebook like 3 minutes, like instantly. And that guy's probably sleeping and just made $1. And then I looked at his reviews and I saw he had like 20,000 reviews. I'm like, he sold a lot of ebooks. So I wrote this paper thing, like maybe I could make it an ebook. And my one professor said, there's not a lot of stuff talking about how to use MySpace bulletins and software for MySpace to promote your business. You should consider turning this into an ebook. And I was like, I'm like a half a step ahead of you. Like I was kind of thinking about that. And I made a little mini site. I sold the ebook on eBay. And then I actually linked up with another eBay power seller, did a separate membership website about how to become a power seller. But long story short, I was in school full time and I made like something like $80,000 or $90,000 the first year on these two websites while I was a full-time college student. And like, I got the bug. And probably around that time, I think that was maybe when Bad Boys came out. I thought I was going to be like Will Smith. I could go continue on that military trajectory and be like a cop with secret money from my side hustle. And I used pseudo names on my membership sites. I was Mr. Black. Nobody knew it was Chris Vendilli. And I had like some really prominent internet marketers buying my stuff. And I had little upsells. You buy the ebook or you could upgrade to the membership area and pay $20 a month. And I had like 30,000 people on my list and hundreds of customers, a private forum. And I took the police gig. And I did that.
What made you decide to do
years.
that? Like you're making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide to go the police route as well?
I don't know, childhood dream. My dad was a cop. My dad's a retired police sniper. We still hang out and do lots of shooting. And it didn't seem mutually exclusive. It was like, this is good job security, great retirement. It's a cool job. And then maybe 3-4 years in, I started to realize like it's still a cool job. I loved it. I love the people, but it was hard to do like something on the side. Although most cops and all my cop and fireman friends and even medic friends, they all have side hustles or they work a ton of overtime. So I never took all the overtime. I did the side hustle. And I took some time off when I was a rookie police officer and kind of got immersed in that. That's more than a job. That's a lifestyle. And after a while, I kind of missed it. And I started building websites for like friends and family. And then word got around that I was good at that. And it actually got me a promotion at work. I thought it was like a bridge to get out of there. And I got called to the chief's office one day, and I was at almost 1,000 person, maybe 900 person department. I'd met the chief twice. Once was academy graduation, and once was for an award I got for an incident I was involved in. And I got coming to work that day, checked my mail, and they're like, the chief wants you to drive down to headquarters. We have like 6 or 7 stations in Pittsburgh. Like,
it's either really good or really bad.
Oh, I thought it was bad. I was like, what did I do? I thought I was in deep trouble. And I walked in there all nervous and plopped down across. I'd never been in his office before. He's like, so I hear you build websites. I was like, I do. It's like, is that a problem? It's like, I didn't think it was a conflict of interest. Everybody, like a lot of guys do hardwood floor refinishing and some guys are plumbers. Like, what did I do wrong? He's like, well, you built a website for one of my friends and he's very pleased with your work. He said, you're very professional and you're technical, you know your stuff. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm not in trouble. He's like, have you ever thought about the computer crime unit? It's like, not really. I like chasing bad guys and going over fences and, guns and drugs and gangs and that stuff. And kind of like where I'm at. And he's like, well, if you ever want to do a rotation through there to see what it's like, you'd be working with digital evidence, cyber crimes, that sort of thing. And I eventually came to my senses and realized there's a lot more career opportunity there to go that route.
It's funny you call it career opportunity, and I'm thinking it seems a lot less dangerous. But
well, that too. The best part of that gig was didn't have to answer 911 calls. I mean, I enjoyed being a public servant, don't get me wrong, but not being at the mercy of the radio is really nice. And we had a secure computer lab where my own supervisor couldn't get in without knocking on the door. So it was a good gig. And I got in there. I went to a Secret Service training to get some certifications and get kind of brought up to speed. It was like 2 months down in Hoover, Alabama. They sent me home with lots of cool new gear for our lab. And I did that like my last 3 years. But during that time, I was working for myself during the day, like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and trying to build up this business. And I go work at the city 4 to midnight and kind of burning the candle at both ends and throw a few kids in there in that time. And eventually decided, YOLO, let's go all in on the agency thing. But at that point, I had built it up to almost $500,000 a year in sales and had a couple full-time employees and some office space we were working out of, and then working at the city at night.
And that was your side gig.
Yeah. And that's what I said. Like, what if this was my full-time gig? My goal was, I realized that I was looking ahead a little bit, but with my military time, I could retire from the city at 43, which I'm 43 this year. And a lot of my buddies I went to the academy with are retiring or they're eligible. But I couldn't get the pension until I was 50. So what most people would do is work till they were 50. I was like, my goal is to build this up so I can get out of there at 43 and then just do that for 7 years until my pension kicks in. And actually what happened was it just grew way faster than I thought it would. And I honestly think you get all this business advice, like learn the power of no and say no to the wrong customers. I actually did it, but I could afford to because it wasn't my full-time gig. So like I'd see certain projects come along and the budget wasn't right or I didn't like it because it just wasn't a great fit. And I was super honest with people like, hey, I don't think I can help you. I either don't have the time or it's not in my wheelhouse. And I think that's why the word of mouth just spread for me really, really good. I was very picky in the early days.
We'll talk about some of the agency life, but I don't know if there's a most memorable police story.
Oh, God. I'll give you a good Pittsburgh story. This one's PG-13. Got a call at about, Pittsburgh's a pretty busy city. We have 60 to 90 homicides a year. I was involved in a lot of those investigations, doing digital evidence. And even when I was a street cop for 5 years in a pretty busy zone, one of the more busy ones in the north side. But we got a call one night. I think I may have even been in field training or just out for a loud music complaint. And it was in a very bad part of the north side. So we're thinking it's going to be, like a party or something. And you never know what you're walking into. And I go down there with one other officer who's still a good buddy of mine. And we get there and it's at a senior high rise. And at the desk, they tell us, these two neighbors upstairs have been disputing. It's like midnight or 1 a.m. It was the middle of the night. It was very late. And might have even been later. I might have been on night shift. I forget. So we go up to like the 6th or 7th floor, whatever floor it was. And as soon as the door opens, you just hear blasting. Anyone from Pittsburgh will love this story. It's the Pittsburgh polka. The whole floor was shaking. So we get there and the door's open, and we knock. It's so loud we could barely hear each other. We go in there and we're yelling like, "Are you okay? Are you in here?" We're afraid we might find like a deceased senior resident or something. And this little old lady in her bathrobe comes running at us and screaming. She's like, "Get out! I didn't say you could come in here." And we're like looking for the stereo to turn it off so we could like hear what's going on. It was so loud, we're like covering our ears. She had a system in there. So we finally get the radio off and we realize she has in earplugs and she was asleep. And this was all because she was mad at her neighbor. And she was blasting the Pittsburgh polka so loud that the whole floor was shaking. And that was a funny one. I mean,
You literally
nothing too serious.
you never know what you're walking into.
Never.
Talk about your new space for a second. COVID hits, people are downsizing. They're even just working from home, not even renting an office anymore. And you go out and you buy a space. And
Right. Yeah.
why?
I might be crazy. Well, the short version is we were in a historic building in the south side of Pittsburgh. It was conveniently located very close to police headquarters. And I was there for about 10 years. I left the city in 2014, but I had moved into that space in probably like 2012, I think. And when we moved in, the place was a dust bowl. It was in a part of Southside that wasn't a lot going on. In the last few years, a new developer came in and they did a beautiful job fixing the place up. Put in a new brew pub. There's a new fitness center downstairs. But all the things we kind of loved about it started to change. Like the free parking went away. It was $150 per person per month once they built the new parking garage. They had 2 buildings in our complex, and they finished one, and they were starting on ours. In order to renew the lease, they wanted me to move into a space that was about 20% smaller for 3 times what I was paying in rent. And I had to move. And I started looking into like, what would it cost? Because we do some video production. We have some equipment and stuff. I was like, what would it cost to get a storage unit? Like, what would we lose? Really culture. And I think a lot of bigger companies are talking about this. What would it cost to lose our home, basically? We weren't coming in 5 days a week. We were only going in 2 or 3 days a week since COVID. But we really liked that. Hybrid was working great, but we needed a space to collaborate and, kind of keep our identity, I guess. So I found this place. It was completely remodeled by a commercial construction company that had intended to inhabit it. And it was kind of too good to be true. It's about 5,300 square feet, more space than we need so we can grow into it. And it's just a little bit more than I've been paying for rent for 10 years. And I did the research, and everything I could find said large downtown skyscrapers, 100,000 square feet plus, like they're in trouble for a while. But privately held, owner-occupied spaces, like in the outskirts of the city, which is where we are. We're in the nice suburbs. That's not going. It's on sale right now, and it's probably not going to take the hit the way that like the big skyscrapers will. So I'm not a commercial real estate agent, but I did all this research, and I felt like this is a pretty safe bet. I'm going to pay a little more than I paid for rent, but now I own the building. If we want to invest in really customizing the space to, like we were talking about before you hit record, we want to invest in really customizing the space to differentiate ourselves even more and provide more value to clients. I'm not afraid to make those investments. And I'm really thinking long-term, with the whole business. So in addition to all that, it was a great personal investment. It's an asset that I hope will appreciate in 15 or 20 years when I'm ready to hang them up.
Because we were talking too about you purchased a few agencies, and I'd love for you to talk about some learnings there and why you went the acquisition route.
Yeah, I guess to back it up, I'll come back to your question, but I signed up and put myself through a training called Goldman Sachs 10K ASB. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but
I went through it also.
Oh, I didn't know you were an alumni of that. Yeah, it's a great program. I loved it. One of the best things I ever did. Did you go to the one at Babson or a different one?
Well, I mean, it was local here in Chicago, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's Babson, collaboration with Goldman Sachs. So for sure,
yeah.
I actually happened to go through it. Typically, you go in person in Chicago, but I went through while COVID was going on. So our cohort was all virtual. So they brought all the professors and people virtually. So I don't know, they had people from Penn and other colleges even coming in and teaching courses.
Yeah, it was great. And it was free. Like you had to apply. Obviously, I'm sure you remember this, but the one I did was through the Babson cohort or whatever. And there was, I forget how long it was, maybe 6 or 8 months. And there was some virtual, but ours also had the in-person portion. So I flew up to Babson, I think for maybe once or twice for 1 to 2 weeks each time. And they told us at one point, I think the value of all the training that we received, I think they estimated it was like $80,000 or something. So it's like
I mean, it's
very
essentially
substantial.
a very comprehensive, expensive executive MBA program.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
Except it's like a full ride if you get it. If you get accepted.
exactly.
Yeah, so I did that, and that's kind of, I think I got to give them a lot of credit thinking back. Like that's where I learned, like, you can, use your money, I guess, as another asset, and borrow money to grow your business. They always say it takes money to make money, and if you're really smart about it, buying those agencies, just like buying this building, I feel like is a great way to kind of grow. And they did an exercise there. They gave us a paper dollar, and they said, if you had $1 to invest in your business, how would you spend it? And they gave us a paper $100 bill and said, if you had 100, what would you do? And you had to write it down. They gave you $1,000 bill. What would you do? And it's pretty easy. Like, I don't know, I'd buy a new desk or I'd buy a computer. Then they give you a $1 million bill, a paper $1 million bill. And they're like, write a plan on how you would use this $1 million to grow your business. I was like, wow, that was powerful. Like, what I wrote down was really interesting. And now what if you could borrow that $1 million? Do you think you could get better than a 6% return on it, or 8% return, or whatever the S&P is? So that really stuck with me, and I found two different opportunities, kind of right place, right time, and it made a lot of sense. And at the point,
Were you
did our
looking, or how did you end up finding them?
Oh yeah, I was looking, but very patiently. I had antennas up. The first one was, let me think how that came to be. Oh, so I had a couple that were kind of swing and a miss. I had one that we got pretty far. We were actually sitting in an attorney's office in downtown Pittsburgh, and I just didn't like some of the terms, and I trusted my gut, and I basically said, I'll give you the short version without revealing anything, because I still talk to this person and something might happen down the road. But basically, it involves some real estate, an office building, and an agency that had been in business for decades. And they wanted some agreements for all of their employees that I could not terminate anyone's employment for 3 years. I wasn't allowed to make any like material changes to the products or services. There's all these restrictions. So I basically said, like, what am I buying? Like, how about we just talk in 3 years? Like, if, because I also wanted the owner to join me, like to kind of merge, and roll up. And I think she kind of agreed. She's like, maybe I'm just not ready. Like, I don't want to lose control of the agency. I'm like, well, that's what we're talking about. Like, call me in 3.
When I buy you, I
years.
mean, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, I want to, like, what I'm doing.
So
is
did you
working,
at that
and I
point,
want to
Chris,
grow
have
fast.
the valuation and the purchase price agreed on, or not yet? You
Oh
did.
yeah.
Oh,
We were
right.
getting ready to make moves. We were very close, and that one felt almost like deflating, but at the same time, it led to 2 other ones that were probably, in my case, even better. So that I came very close. Worked with a business broker who helped me. He specializes in M&A for creative agencies. I kept in touch with him. I just talked to him a few weeks ago, actually. And this is probably 5 or 6 years ago. 2 or 3 years later, come across another one that he kind of dropped in my lap. He told me about the opportunity, and long story short, it turns out I knew the guy. And he basically said, I'll introduce you to this person. And it's just kind of a smaller deal. It's an interesting situation. I would just ask for a $10,000 success fee if you're able to pull the deal off. And he told me all about the agency, and they were in my backyard. And then he was being slow to reveal who it was. I'm like, I have a feeling I know who this is. And eventually he kind of let the cat out of the bag, and turns out it was exactly who I thought it was. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to call him when we hang up and say, like, hey, we know each other, and we talked. And a couple lunch meetings led to a deeper conversation. And at the time, at their peak, they were probably, I forget, maybe 800,000 in sales. And there were 3 partners, and then 3 employees and some contractors. And 2 of the partners were halfway out of the business, and the remaining partner had some gas in the tank, and they did WordPress website design and development and video production, and they had all the staff. And at that time, this is probably 2018, it's kind of hard to find people, but when you can, the way I look at it is I got a team of 5 people and a book of business that was kind of profitable, but we had a lot of common expenses. Like they had office space, we had office space. We didn't need two office spaces. They had an accountant, we had an accountant. We didn't need two accountants. So when I did that normalized P&L and all the fun stuff I learned at Babs, and we were able to come to terms on pricing, it was just a real big win for us. I had it paid off in less than a year.
Talk about coming to terms on price. Did you have an outside company evaluate, or did you do it? How did you end up? What was the process in coming to the price?
Yeah. That first one we did, the broker who introduced us he helped a lot. He earned his $10,000 success fee, and he's a great guy. I'd be quick to introduce him. He's kind of semi-retired, but the firm he was at is still around. They're called Tobin Leff. David Tobin's also kind of a buddy. They're here in Pittsburgh, and they do PR firms and marketing agencies and ad agencies, like succession plans and M&A. And he was instrumental in helping with that. So on that one, he got pretty medieval. Tore it all apart, made a slide deck, and it was a simple deal. At the end, they were debating on what to do with the business or how they were going to sell it, and we had so much synergy, it made a lot of sense. So, the one of the three partners who joined me is now basically like my right hand man, and does our director of client services, and also still 30 years worth of relationships right in our backyard came in the door with them. So that's been just fantastic. The second one was a little
Real
less
quick, Chris, on that one. Were you looking at the EBITDA, and what were kind of the multiples that you were looking at that time? I'm sure, whenever someone's listening, they change, but how did you come to that valuation? You don't have to share what the amount was, but was it a multiple of EBITDA? What did that look like?
This one was pretty unique, without getting into like the precise terms of exactly what we did, but like I can say in general, I'll speak in general terms. Let me just hit ignore on this real quick. My ears are ringing here. What you typically see agencies sell for is like 2 to 5 times EBITDA. And that's for agencies, I'd say like this agency was under $1 million in revenue. So under $1 million in revenue, they don't even usually talk about EBITDA. They're usually talking about seller's discretionary earnings, or SDE, right? So like you got to start to do add backs for like, are they writing off the car? Are they writing off their cell phone? Again, this isn't specific to our deal, but in general terms, like if they're paying themselves an $80,000 salary, but they have another $40,000 or $50,000 in bennies in there, their SDE might be like 130, 140, but their profit might only be 50 grand or 100 grand. So you kind of have to look at it a little bit differently. And those are the size and type of deals that were just my appetite at the time. And I happened to come across probably 6 or 7 of them in 4 or 5 years, and was able to complete 2 of them. And this particular one, we looked at all that stuff, and what we realized more than anything was his team and our team, we already knew each other. There was some chemistry and synergy, and essentially, for lack of a better term, the way I would position is I paid the 2 guys who were halfway out the door to go the rest of the way out the door, is kind of what it came down to, and had a little bit less to do with EBITDA. And within a few months of making some noise about how we had merged and doing a press release, and him notifying his customers, we saw like a huge kind of bounce back. And they were sort of taking what came their way, and then we went on offense basically once we had some more capacity and got the teams aligned. And probably 3, 4, 5 months in, they were having like I was tracking their sales as a division and on our P&L. So I could look at my P&L and their P&L as a division, and then the total. And it'd be 6 months or less in. First month was like loss. Second month, like break even. And I was like, oh boy, what did we do? This is going to get expensive fast. Third month, we like doubled their best month the whole year before, when I looked at their P&L by division report. And it was, mostly just the folks who came on board, just sharing the news and, positive vibes of, what we were doing.
For you, was there like a down payment and then payments over time? Was it an earnout? How did you structure?
This one was simpler. It was a little smaller. I have a pretty good line of credit with my bank. So I paid them 100% up front. That was pretty calculated risk with my line of credit. And then I had it paid back, like I said, in less than maybe about a year, a little bit less. And that was also a way that I negotiated in my favor a little bit. It's like, I'll write a check, but I want the equipment. I want these personnel to join me. I want basically the website is going to be forwarded to our website, that sort of thing. So I think we did a asset purchase versus like stock buyout. And I've heard from people smarter than me that that's usually the way to go in these types of deals. And then the second one was really interesting. It was a HubSpot Diamond Partner. And I saw a post in a Facebook group for HubSpot partners saying, has anyone ever bought or sold an agency? And I'm like, I don't know, 6 months after doing this. And someone tagged me or something. I said, hey, we just did that. I'd love to talk. And when I saw the person and who it was, I assumed she was buying because, she had a great agency, had only been at it maybe 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 people. So we jumped on a call and she told me, no, I'm actually looking to make a big career change. Like, here's kind of where I'm at. And she built a pretty impressive agency pretty quick. She's doing around $500,000 in sales, maybe 400,000 in sales. And I really liked the HubSpot aspect because we do that. And she had some folks that really knew HubSpot very well. And we got to talking. And at the time when we first started the conversation, what she thought the agency was worth was we weren't on the same page. So I was like, tell you what, feel free to hit me up anytime. I'll help you as much as I can, tell you what to look for, what questions to ask, what to watch out for. And at one point, she's like, well, what do you think? I was like, I think you think it's worth a lot more than it's actually worth. And, I told her, like, you can look at the EBITDA at this level. We're really talking about SDE, as I mentioned. And what it's really worth is what someone's willing to pay. And probably 6 or 8 months more goes by, and she talked to 3, 4 other partners, HubSpot partners, and she wanted to do a quick deal. And she was kind of getting feedback similar to what I was telling her when we first started talking. And eventually we were able to come to terms, and that one did involve payment, a down payment. And it wasn't necessarily an earnout, but we basically did owner financing. I was going to do the bank loan, and I don't know if you've ever done a larger bank loan into the multiple 6 figures, but they can get a little dicey. And we eventually did owner financing. We had a lot of trust. We had a lot of shared connections, whatnot. She did some consulting with us, and we basically got her team kind of transitioned over. And that one's going to be paid off at the end of this year. So we did 36-month payment schedule on it with a nice, healthy down payment.
Love it. Chris,
Yeah.
I want to get into a little bit more understanding what you do as a company. And you had a customer, Bactronix.
Bactronix. Yeah, that's one of our case studies.
So talk about Bactronix and what you did.
Yeah, I'd say all my clients are my favorite clients. Bactronix is, I'd say, right up there with the best of them. It's one of our favorite clients. And we always seem to do the best work with the clients who are, I guess, what's the word? They just vibe with us. At the end of the day, it's like a people business. They listen, they trust us. And that's this guy, my man Brian here at Bactronix, to a T. And, what we do for him, digital advertising, SEO, web design and development, a little bit of branding and repositioning. What they do, I guess I'll go there for a minute. They do air duct cleaning, mold remediation, disinfection service, and they have their own line of products for some of these things. And when they started with us, if you go down on this page a little bit, there's a pretty good before and after. I always like these types of projects, but they had a lot of content, but it wasn't really very nicely presented, we'll say. So we were able to kind of, there it is, that slider there. If you grab that little thing in the middle, you can see the before and after. So it was just kind of like night and day to just the look and feel and just growing up their brand to really match who they were in the real world. And I say this all the time, but we made their digital reality more congruent with their actual reality because they were a big business with just an old website. And they had a lot of good content. So we had a lot of good things to work with. Over maybe the first year or so, we focused on helping them create and feature content and kick off some ad campaigns. Maybe in the second year or so, we introduced HubSpot, which helps us a lot as an agency with tracking and reporting and attribution. And we got a couple of their ad campaigns really humming. So we've grown them up to be pretty big player with their Google ads. They're getting hundreds of leads per month. And they're a pretty happy customer. They've been with us now. I think this one has some good stats. If you scroll down, forget what the exact ones were. Yeah, we saw their increase in conversions by over 200%. We more than doubled their paid traffic leads and overall traffic up 50%. So when you see traffic go up and conversions go up 200+% at the same time, that's when things are all going in the same direction.
I love it. Chris, first of all, I just want to thank you for sharing your journey and lessons. And it's been quite a journey, from the Air Force to police to agency owner. I just want to encourage people to check out your website, Vendilli.com. It's VENDILLI.com to learn more. And thank you. And we'll see everyone next time. Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.